If I may, it's showtime. I hereby call the 13 February meeting of the Des Moines City Council Environment Committee to order. The first item of business is, I'm told, Councilmember Grace Matsui should be late, but will be here. So may we begin? I'll just let you know. And then moving on, we need to approve the minutes from our January 9th meeting. Do I have a motion? Okay, great. That's, I think I agree. So let's move on to, apparently we have a, do we want to talk about the Estuary project first or the CIP?
Yeah, I'll introduce it. We'll talk about the CIPs first and then lead into the estuary.
Very good. Take it away.
So Tyler Weekly, Surface Water Manager. I have a consultant team with me here from Parametrics, and Alex Johnson, our civil engineer, head of projects within our surface water group. Each year, we like to come at least quarterly is our goal to share with the public and share with the committee all of our ongoing capital projects, whether in design, whether in seeking grants, or whether in construction, to give an update on those projects. So I will turn it over to Alex to walk through those projects, and then that will lead into a larger update, more in-depth update on the estuary.
Thank you, Tyler. Hi, council members. Appreciate your time. As Tyler said, my name is Alex Johnson, and I'm a surface water engineer, and I'll be giving the capital improvement project update. So going down the list, we'll start with 24th Avenue South pipeline replacement. Also, for your reference, we have a new feature of this plan update, which is the map on the back page. So that kind of gives you an idea of where these are all throughout the city. So feel free to refer to that as we go. So 24th Avenue South is a pipeline replacement project. It's on environmental committee because Surface Water Utility is a funding partner in it. It is currently in its second construction suspension, but is planned to resume this summer and to be able to be completed before the school year starts. Des Moines Memorial Drive, 208 through 212, is a combined project in construction with the next project, which is 216th Place and Marine View Drive. Those are both currently in construction and are currently scheduled to complete construction by probably end of Q1, beginning of Q2. Kent, Des Moines, and 16th is in construction closeout. That one is replacing aged and undersized store infrastructure. We have received the final pay app from the contractor and are proceeding with construction closeout. So that should disappear from this list by the next update we give. 6th Place and 287th is a project that we've just kicked off design with our consultant for. That project is seeking to add new drainage and improve existing drainage systems in the area of those two cross streets and tie in everything into our overall system infrastructure. Marine View Drive Pond is a retrofit project of the pond that's directly across from Taco Time on Marine View Drive, and that is in the same phase where we've just kicked off initial design and permitting with our design consultant. Deep Dean is an outfall project. We are in final preparations for bid advertisement for that. That should be going out to bid sometime this month, and we anticipate that it will be completed by the end of summer. It's a short project, but we want to be doing it in the dry season, so we'll be delaying start time from when we bid, but still want to bid it early to get a good price. Des Moines Creek Estuary will be kicked to the end of this update, as we'll have a much larger update on that project. So I'll skip to Massey Creek. That was a planned estuary project at the mouth of Massey Creek, but due to utility easement and property challenges, we will not be pursuing design. That budget has been wrapped up into, was that to 6 or to Marine View Drive? That was switched over to the pond budget, and we'll be getting the final 10% design package wrap up from our consultant, and that will be shelved until a future time. 10th and 270th is another project that is in final design and is about to go out to bid. It should go out to bid this month and will be completed by the end of Q3. And lastly, 2nd Avenue is a planned project. We have not yet kicked off design, but plan to do that with a consultant in spring of this year. And that one should be built in 2026. Are there any questions on any of these projects?
Councilman Roxiger.
Don't believe so. Oh, by the way, I just got a message from Councilwoman Grace Matsui, and she's had to take her spouse to urgent care, so she probably won't make it.
Okay, if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions. And just speaking more generally, you know, is there a way, you know, like how Jeff has different colors now? Like with the 24th Avenue, it's marked as green, so I'm assuming that means there's high confidence that it will be done by the school year, correct? I'm not being...
That's not necessarily what the green on this sheet indicates.
Okay, what does the green indicate?
It's relative, so you're right, it's both schedule risk and resource risk as far as funding. That one has been green since its origin, meaning it's kicked off, it has a contractor on site with it. In all honesty, there is probably some schedule risk, but that is the ultimate goal, and I think.
This project,
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
this project bridges both transportation and stormwater.
Yeah.
This is the project where we've had issues with PSE, so we're also, it's complicated by the negotiations we're having in PSE. We're somewhere, you know, we believe, and this is a very ballpark number, somewhere around $1 million in delays on this project based upon PSE's efforts. And basically causing us to stop the contractor twice, which has pushed this project out. At this point, we believe PSE is done, and we are getting ready for starting up. It should be done by the end of, I'm pretty confident that we will be done before the school year this time, because we won't have to seal it up again. However, we're also, this project may be lingering for a while because we'll be in negotiations and maybe a legal battle with PSE. But the contract, the project itself will be done, but it won't, the books won't be closed until after we settle the issue.
Okay, so this is just a suggestion, but it would be helpful to me if there were like two colors, like basically one that was budget risk and the other that was, you know, schedule risk, if that's possible, because I think the public will see green and, you know, green go and so on. Regarding the Marine View Drive pond, if it is successful, boy, this is an open-ended question, but how, you know, we've had complaints since forever about, you know, Lake Taco Time and so forth. So I understand that each improvement is incremental, but how much closer does it get us to where it would be a permanent, you know, dry area, or is that?
So our Lower Massey Creek project that we wrapped up probably 2 years ago now that put the pump in, that was 100% success in remediating the Taco Time, we'll call it Taco Time Lake problem, as it's been historically named. Since then, there has been, I think, 2 events where there was a malfunction with the pump, which resulted in some notice flooding, that complaints that were received. This project, it's retrofitting the pond not for flow control but for water quality.
Okay.
So it won't have any impact to the hydraulics of that area, and the pump will still be the main sort of solution for that intersection.
That's very good information. The other last, can you describe the 2nd Avenue South Pipe project I apologize for laziness, but just what it's designed to achieve.
Sure. So this one is in the North Hill neighborhood. It's on a residential street, and this is a sort of biannual complaint we get where in very large storms, the system is undersized and water bubbles out of the grate and floods the roadway. It's been on our medium priority list for a while, and it's sort of a smaller project, residential end, about one city block worth of replacement, but it's kind of reached the time where it's next up on our plate to do.
Second Avenue between what and what? Oh, never mind. No,
Yeah,
no,
we
no,
have
I'm
this
sorry,
map.
man,
I
I'll
don't-
look it up. I'm being lazy.
No,
Let's move on. Time is, time waits for, no stormwater system.
I do have one question is, okay, on the Lake Taco Time
Yeah.
issue, where are you pumping the water to?
It's directly to the creek, from sort of the storm drainage along KDM
Right?
into the creek.
So what is causing the backup? What was causing the backup for the,
It's just, it's kind of the hydrology of the area where that's a low point.
Okay.
And in very large storms, the system there just gets overwhelmed.
okay,
So I wasn't part of the solution in designing that, why they picked the pump and this outfall, but that's what they came up with for the fix here.
so it's in effect, it's boosting the outflow of that low point, that low area?
Yeah, essentially,
Into the
it's
creek?
creating another outlet for the water to go. So it's reducing the volume that is going down
Okay,
the existing outfall, yeah, and sending it to another one.
so it wasn't an option to just increase the size of the outfall?
Yeah, I'm sure that was looked at. I don't know why that decision wasn't made,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
It was already a low point, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's posturing.
No, and just to be, clear, this is no commentary on any, it's been this running gag, like every couple of years, that there've been like maybe half a dozen fixes, okay? And so after a while, people start to think that it's like, it's the never-ending story. So anyway,
No, and Councilmember, there's also an issue with regards, we had like the project to help widen up the creek at the base, but we don't have property access, right? So
Oh.
things like that,
That's-
so it's a very complex variable because you could have a log jam down there that slows the creek flow out, backs the water up, and pump fails after it's running too long, and then high storm. So there's lots of different variables, and it's not a very easy fix, and that's it. An ultimate fix requires probably to bring the creek out wider, further out, which we're not gonna be able to do because we don't have property right.
Yeah, well, that's another chapter in the never-ending story. So, I guess moving on,
Yeah, we can take it to the estuary.
please.
Great. Since there's no further questions, I'd like to introduce our consultant team again, Nikki Redden and Paul Fent from Parametrics. Thanks to you both again for coming tonight. So since the last time we were here, we have progressed the design a bit and refined things, but we heard you asking for a bit more tangible look at what things are going to look like. And so the big change will be the renderings and the fly-through that our consultant has been able to deliver. But also wanted to note that we appreciate your questions and your input from last time, and we haven't forgotten anything. So if we haven't directly addressed your questions from last time, they have remained in our parking lot and will be addressed at the point in design in which we're ready to get into that level of detail. And I would ask that we hold all questions until the end of the presentation, and there should be plenty of time to go back to slides and go into detail as you two would like. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our consultants.
Okay, if we can go to the first slide. What I'll be doing today is, I'm Paul Fenton with Parametrics. I'm the project manager on this. And what we'll be doing today is to address some of the questions that you had before. And just to give a little bit more context and kind of a reminder back to where we were before. When we when we started the project, we broke it into 4 different areas because each one of them was independent of one another, even though ultimately it'll be one single project. So we looked at alternatives for the area that we, oops, wait, you can't look ahead yet. I was hoping for the pointer. There we go. So we're looking at the area, so we call this the bulkhead area or the viewpoint. We call this the green or the meadow, and so on. And then we looked at some other parts, mainly up the stream itself. So those are areas that, again, even though they're next to each other, they have a different set of evaluations for their alternatives analysis. So what you saw in the last time is that we had proposed a preferred alternative for the beach area, for the bulkhead and so on, and did a rendering of that. And we had a plan view of the meadow area, but we didn't have any other rendering for it. So we've got that now. We've got both of them. And a couple of things that I want to point out about these is as we start to look at the different alternatives, we want to start showing how they start to fit together. And so recognizing that as we do one, we do another one. And from a technical point of view, as far as building them or how they connect to each other, there is not really a strong connection. They still are reasonably independent. But as an entire project, they are very connected together because ultimately we'll get into permitting, and we're into the granting and into the permitting for these. And so both of those things we'll be starting to do and ask for trade-offs, that if there's some things that would require some permitting, they might want some offsets and so on. So ultimately these things will, from a project perspective, start to be connected and be evaluated as a single project. The second is that we want to make these things fit together somewhat naturally, so that as we move across the beach and so on, that the beach kind of connects to each other and so on. So even though you see a setback in here, the beach itself actually comes out pretty close to where the beach over here starts and so on. And there's reason that we can explain why different things are out there. But basically wanted to look at this a little bit more just so you know that part of the consideration is that they are connected now as far as they relate to each other. One other thing I want to point out in here is that, and we'll get into a lot of detail about this, is that we've in the preferred alternative, in the recommended alternative that we showed you in the plan view, we had a place where basically where the meadow would stop and the estuary would start. And so what we've done just for planning purposes is created sort of a hard boundary between the two. This is more for graphical things, and there's a lot of other technical reasons why we show it right now like this. But just don't get too focused on the idea about the detail of what this will look like, but recognize that that's a pretty important separation between the different places and so on, not necessarily the solution for the separation between the places. So Nikki, you can go from here.
Thanks, Paul. Yep, this is, again, Nikki Redden, surface water engineer from Parametrics. Here's a look at our rendering from the meadow area looking out towards the Puget Sound. Just to give kind of an idea of, we know that this is a very important event space, so we wanted to give a look at what the view would really look like while you're standing on the lawn, looking out at the view that I'm sure most people are interested in over the Puget Sound. You can also see we have the pedestrian bridge there relocated to the left side of this meadow. Then moving on, this is a little bit of a closer view to the actual estuary part. And we do have 2 different renderings here, one at low tide, this is the low flow in the channel, and then one at high tide. And I can kind of flip back and forth between these 2 renderings, but first we'll let you just kind of absorb what we're looking at here. So we do have the beach here, and then a little bit of a beach berm to protect this estuary habitat behind here. And then I'll go ahead and flip to the next. Here's what it might look like at high tide. Paul pointed out a lot of the most important features, so I'll just kind of give a few moments to let these pictures really sink in. But yeah, flipping back and forth. Again, the low tide, probably the lowest flow we'd expect in the channel, and then high tide, some of the highest we'd expect in the channel. Next, we have the fly-through video, which I think will need to be pressed play. you wanna go back?
Yeah, I think there's a couple more things that would be worth pointing out. One, that it has to do with the revetments, and they're both needed in order to protect the beach structures on either side. So there's one on the right side there, and then if you point at the one on the left, which is a little less, they're both needed to protect some of the structure and the features there and so on. So ultimately, we're still needing to protect infrastructure like trails, like places where people go and so on. And those two revetments provide that opportunity. There are other ways to make them look, but these are probably the most straightforward ways to look at this. The other part is remembering that road on the left there is the long-term access. And so this alternative and all alternatives make sure that that can and will be maintained. So a lot of what we're having to do in that area is putting in revetment and putting in seawall in order to protect that access. So I just and then just pointing, if you can point to about where that bridge crossing is too, so that we don't lose sight of that. It doesn't show up as clearly. So the pedestrian access and the pedestrian bridge does move further up the stream and then crosses right there. And that will also be, as if you recall from the last meeting, there are a lot of utilities that are present out here. And so that will become that bridge, and then that location where the trail will be behind that, what's right now is a seawall there, will be a utility corridor. So the utilities may go behind there to continue them. So that'll be one of our bigger construction and design constraints, is relocating that. But that's an important feature that will ultimately be there that you won't be able to see, but it's something we have to deal with. No, not on the fly. Didn't go.
You could try exiting out of presentation mode and then pressing play, see if that works. Oh, yeah. It's not loaded in for some reason. It's a 0.
I do have a backup on a flash drive if we need it, but.
One thing we can offer is we can send this over to council after the fact,
Yeah.
if we don't get it to work.
Feel free to close and reopen if that works. In the meantime, do you want to?
Yeah, why don't we finish what we have here and so on, and then we'll come back to this. So one of the questions that was asked was, what's the change in the areas and so on? And so you could see the, whoops. There was what the existing meadow is, that's outlined in green, and then when we're finished with the area that's would switch over to the estuary and so on, that reduces the meadow down to 31,000 square feet. And then there's some discussion about the possibility that some of the upper area could be reconnected to it and so on, that might offset a little bit of that change, and that's about 5,000 square feet. So you can get a feel for what area, what percentages that we're talking about that would change. And so there'd be about like we say, about a 16% reduction in the area of the green outline of the meadow. There was some interest in another question. This is just for a little bit more context where we are and so on. So it's a timeline of what's happening, and then kind of what some of the public involvement and public engagement elements are. So in the alternatives development that's already happened, we've had a number of briefings with staff and with the grantors. You met one last time they were here. And so they've at least seen and reflected on some of the work that we'd already done and helped guide some of the stuff that has happened. The red box is the first and this council presentations and so on. Once we have this feedback, then we'll look at selection of what a preferred alternative and begin what we call the 10% design, which we kind of describe as a type, size, location design. So it lays out the detail on exact is a strong word, but about where everything's going to be, how big it's going to be, how small it's going to be, and so on. And so with that, at that point, when that's finished, then if you look at the bottom part, that's when we'll work with having a web map put up with the project description. And then at that point, somewhere in there, we'll probably do some general surveys of the public, saying what are their interests, how do they use the park, things like that, just to kind of get a little bit more feedback from the general public if they go to the web map and look at the project and want to offer some thoughts and opinions. Then from that, we'll go to the 30% design, and at that point, we start taking it and running it around again to the stakeholder group for stakeholder input, and this is lots of different levels of stakeholders, so it could be anywhere from some of the resource agencies might start getting introduced. We have cultural resources review, going back to the grantors and so on, and then some more internal to your staff review. And then at that point, when the 30% design is completed, then the web map would be updated. Then we'll plan is to come back here at that point, because that 30% design will have basically all the plan sheets laid out. We'll have dealt with a lot of the underground issues and things like that. We'll be approaching or may have the first cost estimates of it at that point. There's usually some sort of cost to reflect on. Then after that, moving into next year, 60% design, again for the review for grantors, continue to update the public and so on. And then between 60 and final, going into, at that point, getting more feedback from the public, and ultimately your approval to go out to bid. So, and then you can see on the bottom, and maybe Tyler wants to add something to this about what's funded or not funded, but where the funding leaves off, and then where new grant funding will come in.
Yeah, so as it shows, we are currently funded through 30% design. Staff are applying for a grant this month to take design from 30% to 100. I believe it's, the ask is 550K. 515K that we're going to be submitting a grant this year, and we would know later this year if we were awarded that to bring this to 100% design. At that point, we're ready for construction, and then begins the process for staff then to look for grant funding, state, local, potentially federal grants to find probably a bunch of different funding sources to get it built. Currently, there's only a small amount in the 30%. That's internal swim budget. I believe that's at 40K, but there's no other internal revenue currently budgeted for this project. That's what I had to add, Paul.
I'd just like to point out one thing real quick is that up to this point, we've done alternative design, alternatives development. So we showed you the different options with the preferred alternative, which was this one. And that there are things on these pictures that you see that will change. They're not locked in stone as we go through design. One was the example of the wall up by, or the protection between the estuary and the green. So, but you'll have time to comment and make comments and talk about those items that change from the documents you have in front of you at the 30% design, at the 60% design, and at the council presentation. So there'll be times evolve, because they will evolve in the future, that you'll be able to make comments on those evolutions.
Do you want to do this?
Sure, yeah, just a few other things that we heard from the last council meeting that we wanted to make sure that we addressed. In our future design stages, we will be reviewing the proposed metal elevation, especially with respect to the historic building and flood elevations around that area. So we had talked about in our last presentation, raising the meadow to 14 feet. And then when we really get down into the nitty-gritty details of the design, we will be reviewing those other elevations before making that decision. And then we'll also be taking into account the road elevations with respect to their flood elevations also, especially Cliff Avenue, seeing what needs to be done there if we're seeing flooding impacts in our assessment. So that brings us to our questions portion.
Councilmember Oxiger.
Yes, okay, so we're gonna raise the meadow to 14 feet. How long is that going to, how much time is that gonna buy us as far as king tides seem to be progressing?
Wait for 2100.
So, right now, under pretty normal patterns of flooding and king tides and so on, I think we were seeing that the big king tide, which was a tide of record in December 22, gets up to about 13.5, and so we'll be at 14. When you go back to what normal high tides are and so on, I would probably consider it that those extreme events would still flood the green area and so on, but that all the regular high tides with future sea level rise would be addressed. So kind of normal conditions and so on. So it's basically like that 14 will shift you to today's normal conditions, which is generally not flooding. Once in a while it would.
Okay. And how much of an increase is that? What is it now that it's flooding at?
Around 12 and a half.
12 and a half, so.
Yeah, there's some holes, lower holes, I think along the water around 11 plus and so on. So about 2 feet.
So then with regard to the green, then will we be putting in any irrigation or anything, or is it just gonna be fill?
That'll be a design decision that will come along. I anticipate that it'll probably be about what the maintenance is right now, other than if you wanted to enhance it or needed to enhance it. Clearly, usually there is establishment irrigation at the bare minimum, and then after that you decide what's your long-term operation need.
Okay, and then also the area towards the water, you know, beyond the bridge and the path becoming, you know, towards the water and stuff. Are you going to be excavating in there, or is that just going to allow it to naturally revert back to?
There's actually quite a bit of excavation and stuff.
Okay.
So the little veins of water that are going through there are going to be excavated down to, so that they're regularly inundated even down to some of the low tides. So what was the bottom elevation is around 0 to 4?
It's like six
Okay,
feet.
6.
Around
See?
up there.
So around 6 and so on. So, and then the green areas are around 8. And so those will be all excavation downward.
Okay.
And those elevations are established based on the frequency of inundation. So to cycle through the different tides and so on, how long they spend at each water level turns them into what type of habitat they are and then what type of vegetation they have. Right now, these elevations are set based on existing conditions. So one of the things that we would be doing is considering whether or not we want to advance it a little bit due to sea level rise, or just let that area then just change itself during sea level rise over a long period of time, because there would be normally be adjustments to the plantings and the mud and so on anyway. So this just kind of gives it a head start closer to where it would be, and then let the system just adjust to the sea level rise.
And once this is done, are we still going to have sedimentation that we're going to have to remove periodically, or?
There's nothing that we can do about the sediment, reasonable that we can do about sediment loads coming down the stream right now. So, but there are things to be aware of and so on, is that one of the important considerations when you're doing these estuary projects is that these estuaries tend to be the deposition point. And where that deposition point is, depending on the slope of the stream and how much depth there is and what the sea level is and so on. And so, if you change the conditions, it can change the location of where the sedimentation occurs. So that's one of the main, it will still occur, but it's one of the main considerations to whether or not we can get the water to continue to carry the sediment past some of these places. Because as we open that area up, especially under the bridge, then that starts to become a place where it would be encouraging sedimentation. And so we don't want that to happen, because then it would result in having to do sediment removal at times. So the interest is making sure that that's a primary consideration of exactly how we open it up to kind of push the sediment to where it might be okay to go. The sediment into the estuary is not a problem. That's just what they do, and they're going to change and so on. And then this continued sedimentation out into the water, that's what's been happening for a long time, and then that continues to move downshore.
One housekeeping note before more questions. We will be doing a very similar presentation at full council under the city manager's report, so it's opportunity for additional questions for the full council. And then during the old business item, there's a motion for the next iteration of our consultant contract, basically to get us to that 30% design, which will be presented under old business, and there's a council packet for that. But I just wanted to mention that here at committee.
And do we have an estimated timeline as far as?
Hopefully no one gets motion sickness,
We needed some music for this.
like the Jurassic Park theme.
Yeah.
It would be very disappointing if we couldn't show this here. So I'm glad it works. It's a very cool fly through. Okay, so 30% design, we add movie trailer music.
Perfect.
So we need to find a grant for licensing.
So timeline.
So, yes, well, we're looking at 2026 for final design. How long do we anticipate this is going to take to accomplish once we get the full go-ahead on it? Is it a year-long project, or is it
For construction?
construction?
I guess that's a me question.
You or Paul, if you guys have a sense of it. I don't. I'm assuming maybe it'd be one window, fish window.
It's a lot of work to do in one window and so on. So I think, but it's also hard to break it into parts. And so I would anticipate that it wouldn't be more than 2 years. And I think that if there's a way, a lot of times they can do a lot of work behind so you leave the existing stuff there, do all the work behind it, and then come in for during what's called the fish windows and so on, and do the work right on the shoreline in a very narrow time. It's possible it might be better or easier to do the estuary and the stream separately, so that might be where you might do two different projects, and they could be reasonably separated. But it'll be an undertaking, and then of course, because there's construction going on and access so on, it would pretty much shut down the park for the time when that work is going on. At least because either we'll have to close down access or carefully manage access, and then we need someplace to store for mobilization and so on and staging, and then there'd be a pile of dirt we have to get rid of. So it'd be a challenging project to implement. It's certainly possible to keep it open, but there definitely would be some constraints.
So when you say keep it open, are you talking about keeping the meadow open, or are you talking about the entire park?
I would say that there will need to be an access road for trucks to get in and out. And,
Yeah, from a constructability standpoint, I would assume that we probably need to close the majority of the park function staff during construction.
So all of the rentals and all of that would be put on
Absolutely. I would guarantee that, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
One more note on the timeline is just a caveat here that it is highly variable. We are able to project out what we can anticipate in the near future, but as we go through time, it gets highly variable with one, grant funding. We're not guaranteed these grants come through, and then also permitting. As we engage these permitting partners, certain permits can take years,
This would be a 10-year
potentially.
project easily.
10 years.
Could be 6, could be 5, could be 10.
Yeah. As we move through time, we'll give you our best estimates, but yeah, it's gonna come in incrementally.
And to clarify, that's for that's design, permitting through the end of construction, not strictly construction for
So
that.
it's not 2035.
Would be probably worst case scenario if we run into every possible permitting challenge that you could get, and then funding challenges.
And funding.
And so we have a funding variable and a permitting variable. And so those two drivers can change a lot of different things.
So, but we're not gonna get into a situation where we get halfway to the project and it just shut it down. We're gonna.
Correct.
This is-
Till we got full go.
Correct.
Correct. We wouldn't dig and shut stuff down unless we knew we could complete it.
Okay.
Yeah, as Paul said, it may get to the point where some elements could get separated, but we would not embark on construction on any one element without having the funding to see that full scope through.
Another option could be as we get further into design, maybe you could split it and do, you know, the portion, at the beginning of the park and the beach, and maybe you could do, you know, the meadow at a second half, right? So there could be, as we get deeper into design, we can look at those different options. We may phase the project, do one phase and the other phase, because the funding and the permitting comes at different times.
And at what point on this do we have to pass this through the historic preservation people?
That's gonna go with, as part of the design, as we progress through design and permitting, we'll have to do everything we did like we did in the Outlook Park, where we get archaeology and all of those types of things.
The initial screening of that is intended in this contract right now, so that once we have this concept, this includes at least a cultural resources and historic review.
Thank you.
So, time being what it is, I'm just gonna blow through a couple of things. No. So, some of this is cosmetic, but some of it is functional. And I just want to, is the location of the bridge a functional aspect that we can kind of rely on, or is it one of those? Okay, so where you've proposed it, that's one thing we can kind of count on. It's easy.
Councilmember, it can move a little bit.
Okay, but roughly, no, I'm just saying roughly, that's kind of, and, like I don't know what it is, the green stuff, and the log, those are engineered, or those are cosmetic? At the proposed estuary and beach rendering, like there's green stuff.
The wood and so on is functional,
Okay.
but there's an aesthetic element to it that is mainly intended to be functional.
Okay,
But there's an engineering element to it.
no, I'm just trying to, because like there are a whole bunch of trees here that I think are lovely, and, but they don't exist, and so I'm just trying to get a sense of what. And, okay, so it's 515 for the grant. I vaguely recall we talked about it being two separate projects. Is that for both projects, meaning the meadow and the,
How it was presented was, when we gave the presentation last time, Councilmember, we split it into either side of the creek,
yeah,
just for ease of presentation purposes.
okay,
But the design grant we're talking about is for both sides.
the whole shebang, got it. So,
The project is all-inclusive.
okay, good. And let's see here. There are options for how much to raise all of this stuff. That is something that's still up for discussion, or it's?
Yes.
Okay. It might be helpful for the council to have a sense of what each foot costs, if that makes sense, what I'm asking. And, let's see here. And just I think the council will be really interested in the idea of connectivity, meaning just, you know, how people get from the fishing pier over to here. It's kind of a thingy now, and so anything that makes this more holistic or whatever, if that's part of this design process, I think that would be.
Paul and Nikki, could you just elaborate a little bit on our sub-consultant with the park programming piece and how that's an element in this?
Let me say one thing
Yeah.
first, Councilman. So when we look at different heights in the design, we're really designing towards, you know, the king tide of the 2021 for a timeframe. And if we, you know, if we add a foot just on, say we make it 15 foot on the green, that changes all the other infrastructure, and we end up with multiple designs. That iteration starts to get much more expensive with regards to this.
No, I get it. That's why I like
So,
this,
yeah, so like-
this thing. I
So
just,
the design, what I'm trying to say is that the design of the 14-foot green is designed to a 2100 timeframe where we believe the park would be safe. And so if we want to say we want to take a look at 15 feet, that changes more than just the elevation of the green. It changes a lot of the other connection points, and it really starts an iteration of costs. To come up with a number that says every foot's going to cost us this, very difficult.
Okay.
Unless we design every level.
I'm just saying that's what people,
understand.
what you just said is extremely helpful, because, I mean, the reason I supported the recommended thing is because there are like 30 different dependent variables, but the public will want to à la carte this. And I just want to be able to have an explanation that says, this is something that we thought about, you know.
And we have thought about it, and we're tagging it to the ocean ride, correct me if I'm wrong, the expected ocean rise to get us to 2100.
Sweet. Councilmember Oxiger, anything else at the moment? Okay, and any closing comments from all of you wonderful people?
No, just, I think it is important to mention the park programming piece. I know that's a very important element. It's the beach park. It's a resource of the city, and that we're mindful of that, and there is a component in the design that is specifically looking at, as we move through these design iterations, that is, we're being conscious of that. And I don't know if you have any more to elaborate on that.
I guess I'll just offer that we had a park programmer have a park programmer on our team, and they were the ones that were helping making sure that we were not losing what we had. So most of what there's always trade-offs in this, but I'd say it's mostly geography, you know, land space, not functionality
Yeah, no, I'm just
at this point.
the feedback I get all the time is that we have all of these lovely little components that just don't, and to me, this is an opportunity to start hooking everything together, and you've already thought of that, so I feel bad for even mentioning it. Unless there are any other comments, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Great, we're out of here. Thank you so much. You guys are the greatest.